Well, hello and welcome to another one of my live conversations celebrating Reboot Hiring. Yes, I'm still shamelessly plugging it. It's got to be done. Today, I'm joined by Prem Kumar, who is from Humanly. Thank you for joining me today.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a fun conversation, and we can blame Bennett's song. So if it all goes to shit, it's his fault. Bless him. Good man. He's probably still asleep, to be fair. It's quite early for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 7 a.m. Bright and early here in Seattle, Washington.
And you've gone into the office. I assume that means you missed the traffic. So I guess this.
No traffic this morning. It was a nice commute.
I hope you give yourself an early afternoon. So, Prem, give us a bit of a background on, who you are and how you ended up you're co-founder, aren't you, of
Mhm.
Humanly? So how did that
Yes,
all come about? How did you end up in our world of
absolutely. It is a
recruitment
wonderful world
chatbots?
to be in. My background, I'm right now CEO and co-founder at Humanly. My
Hmm.
background has primarily been in HR tech, TA tech. Spent about 10 years at Microsoft, and 5 of those was on our HR solution delivery team. So as we made build and buy decisions to serve our global workforce, that was my team. When
Yeah.
we acquired LinkedIn, one of my roles was kind of bringing the data in through the acquisition and the new set of use cases. So really product, people, technology, and then I entered the startup world after Microsoft.
Wow. How was that? Gosh,
They're
big
still working on it.
company startup.
Yeah, no, it was quite a certainly a shift. I've always kind of felt that I wanted to make an impact in the as an entrepreneur. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
quite a shift. I had my first kid when I was at Microsoft, my son who's 9 now, and it was
Yeah.
a lot of time on paternity leave thinking about the impact I want to make on the world, and it was kind of a moment
Oh,
that
that's nice.
had me leave. After I left, Microsoft rolled out a very amazing new paternity leave policy, so I missed that one,
Of course. Of
but it
course.
was a good transition.
They did it literally the week after, right? It was planned. It was like,
Yeah,
okay, he's back now. He's left.
exactly.
What was it like working for a big giant like that, though? Did you feel like you could make that impact? I don't suppose you could, as much as you'd hope,
Yeah, no, I think that
without getting yourself in the shit, obviously. Like,
yeah,
want
no,
to get you
for
sued.
for sure. I feel like you kind of you can make a pretty large impact, but within a smaller scope. So when we're launching,
Right.
I might be working on a smaller feature, but that feature might be touching hundreds of millions of people. Versus in the startup world, especially when you're starting, there's not the scope is huge. But
Yeah.
you're not necessarily touching as many lives. So yeah, it was interesting. I was there through all 3 CEOs when I started. Bill Gates was CEO, and he left 2 months after I started, so hopefully I didn't have anything to do with that. But then Steve Ballmer and Satya. So it was really kind of three different companies when I was there from a culture standpoint.
It's really interesting. So, how did Humanly come about then? How
Yeah.
did you end up in but that world? Because there were the 3 of you that founded it. I'm forgetting my snooping, or was it 2 of you? 3 of you. No,
No,
it's
your
3 of you.
snooping is on point. You were correct. So
Because I remember going, oh, there's 3 co-founders. That's really unusual. Maybe there should be another name when it's 3, like tri-founders or something. That's I don't know something. I remember having that weird thought. That's why it sunk in.
I might have to use the try founders thing next time. But you were correct. Yeah. So I have 2
Yeah.
co-founders. One is on my background's primarily in product. I have a technical
Mm,
co-founder. And then it
yeah.
was really important for us to be close to our customers early and bring someone as a founder
Mm,
early on the go-to-market side. So that's
mm.
my other co-founder. But to answer your question around how we kind of got into this, how I got into
Why
the space.
this?
Yeah. So it really started with just being a job candidate, which many of us have been
Mm.
at one point in time. I
And
just
it's such
remembered,
fun.
yeah. Oh yes, joyous, and hopefully tools like us can help make the experience a little better. But
Hence, we are
what's
speaking today. Let's let more people know about it. Goodness
yeah,
me.
yeah, for sure.
So you
But
were
yeah,
in the job hunting experience. and
Yeah, I
just
was in the job hunting experience when I was graduating from college. My I didn't have any experience in
yeah.
technology. It was I spent about 4 years at Albertsons, which is a grocery
Mm,
store, bagging groceries and doing customer service. And we didn't have I didn't have the experience. But what I noticed right away is, I applied to all these jobs and never heard back, never heard back, never heard back.
right.
Which I found was normal at the time. It felt like there wasn't much equity in the effort I was putting in as a
Yeah.
candidate and what I was getting back. And then when we did interviews, I would compare notes with a colleague of mine, and it was very interesting. She was interviewing with the same background, same major, but being asked completely different questions than me, being grilled on different things than me. So it felt like the process was
Wow.
disjointed, inconsistent, and not
Mm.
fair on either side. So I wanted to
When,
kind of work to solve that.
when you think about that, at that point, and when you're, a fresh graduate, but you're doing a job, etc. You're just doing anything, right? But that you wouldn't really have that understanding that it's quite common for this industry to ghost people, which is totally unacceptable because actually about 87% of people end up down or depressed. And I'm talking applicants, not even people in the interview process, just people who apply and don't hear back end up down or depressed because it does knock your self-esteem. It must be even harder when you barely started out in the world to that be your first experience of the world of work. It's like people just don't reply. And almost it sets a precedence that then not replying is okay as well. It's like, gosh,
Yeah, no,
never
you're
really thought
absolutely
about that.
right. And yeah. I mean, in addition to leaving candidates feeling the way you mentioned, which is absolutely true, there's
Mm,
companies like Virgin Media that lose $6 million a year because
mm,
candidates that have a negative experience are going to competitors. But you're right. It's one of those things and processes that
mm,
you kind of expect to work in a different way. You put a lot of time
mm.
into your resume, cover letter, application, and are generally, in many cases, especially in these entry level roles, not hearing
Mm,
back or getting like a 3-line applicant tracking system response. So hits
mm.
you hard when you enter it for the first time, and then people get
Yeah.
a little laissez-faire about it, and it just becomes the way it is. But I don't believe that's the way it should be.
No, oh, God, I definitely don't. I mean, I've been talking for God, years. I mean, my whole book, my first book, which I think Human Leads in twice, or is it Bennett's in twice? Human
Yeah,
Leads
no,
in.
no, we made
Anyway,
it. We made it. We made
are you
it.
in both the books? Can't
Yes.
remember. You definitely
Yeah.
made it in my latest book, which is pretty cool because there's hardly any technologies mentioned in Reboot Hiring. So the fact you're in there is really cool. But in the Robot Proof Recruiter was very much about like, can we please remember there are human beings with thoughts, feelings, and emotions in this process behind every application and every email. And I just feel like the 2020s has just been hell for talent acquisition, that it's not even intentional. It's just they're so overloaded and underfunded and disrespected, and
Mhm.
it's just crazy. But when you talk about unfortunately that, well, I know that oh my God, I'm having a mental blank on the name. Steve Gard from Benchmarks is trying to
Mhm.
get another case study to go with. We've got one case study, the Virgin Media case study, on how much it costs. Like
Yep.
we need more, but at least he's trying to fix that one. But I love what you guys are doing with what
Yeah,
you're
we
doing,
definitely need
particularly
more.
for the high volume, isn't it, and the entry level.
Yeah. So, and to kind of respond to one of the things you said as well, like you're right. It isn't because recruiters and TA professionals
Mm,
are trying to create a bad experience. They quite
mm,
frankly don't have the time, money, and resources, or even seat at the table. I think in a perfect world, every candidate
mm,
engagement would start with a conversation, and that's certainly what we're trying to do. So yeah, we're focused on
mm.
mid-sized companies all the way to enterprise, and we have solutions that help
That's good.
source, screen, and schedule candidates at schedule. So we think
Mm,
every candidate that comes to your website and applies, just like every sales prospect, should get a demo, so to speak. They should be able to talk
yeah.
to your company, get their questions answered. Yes, and high
Particularly
volume
now,
is
because
big for us.
there's such simple questions. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but they're simple questions, aren't they, that people kind of want to know at first, like location, salary, all this kind of, that actually you can quite easily cut through and answer that for them. when there's still, I know it's law in some states in the US to actually advertise the salary, but we do know what people are doing with that, because they're still trying to hide it. But it's just like covering the basics is going to help everybody. It's just
Mhm.
save everybody time in that respect.
Yeah, and when you use solutions like chatbots, if done in the right ways, it's oftentimes not the difference between, hey, a candidate, would they rather talk to a human or a chatbot? It's really, would you rather talk to a piece of technology like a chatbot or be ignored
Mm.
in many cases, or wait a week to talk to a
Yeah,
human? And I think if you do it in the right way,
give them the
like
choice.
you're right, yeah, there's only a set of questions, and oftentimes humans might not be adequately trained to handle at that scale and
That
volume.
volume.
So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
but well, they're not.
yeah.
I mean, this has become very, very evident. And like you said, if there's not a seat at the table, if we can't, it is crazy, isn't it? Because we're the people that hire the people, therefore decide the fate of the company, but we never have a seat at the table, and we're always undervalued and underfunded and treated as a cost center. I mean, it's just the whole makes no sense to me. But on the conversational chatbot route, pulls out that piece of
Mhm.
paper. Martin Redstone did a post, which you also saw,
Yes,
which was
yeah.
yesterday, wasn't it? And he was talking about stuff that I truly don't understand, which is probably a lot like many recruiters. But he was saying that there are some vendors who have large language models and they're pretending that that's conversational AI. And really, it actually comes down to the natural language understanding. Am I saying this correctly? That will set apart in the investment in conversation design. Would you like to address that and make that make sense to a 3-year-old?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, and then that actually is kind of the difference between and Martin's great. So
He's also
Well, yeah, and there's a difference between being able to have a conversation with a human and being able to recruit a human. So, if I
yeah,
gave my son who's 9 a script, he could probably interview a candidate. Would I be? He could read the questions and he could write
yeah.
down the notes for the answers. Would I be satisfied in the candidate that he picked for our job at Humanly? Probably not. And that's where the nuance comes in around knowing like what are the pay transparency laws in Colorado, and that might impact my answer. So, but I also think natural language is just one part of the conversation, and to me,
Mm,
chatbots and conversational AI are less about chatting and conversing, and they should be more about transacting and automating. Can you
yeah.
get them to that best next step? Maybe that's scheduling time with the recruiter. Maybe it's they're a silver medalist candidate, so you might route them
Mm,
elsewhere. And I think tools
gotcha.
like a well-designed chat. So an example of conversational
Mm,
design is a simple way is if we are trying to create a better candidate experience,
mm,
instead of just hitting the candidate with a ton of questions via chatbot,
mm,
let's answer their questions. Let's
mm,
combine open-ended with, if you're on mobile, you might not, even though it might be cool AI, you might not want to type a whole paragraph and have it be analyzed. You might want to click a button that says, this is the job I want. So can you use things like buttons, choices, and natural language? And then,
yeah.
conversational AI has been defined, at least in the recruiting
Mm,
tech space up to now. It's very much been one-to-one with chatbots, but there's a lot
mm,
of other ways we converse. We converse over SMS, we
yeah.
converse over email, we converse like you and I are doing now. So if we're
Mm,
really talking about conversational AI, it's important we think about, all the conversations. And to me, that's part of conversational design. When is the
yeah.
appropriate time for what channel?
Yeah. That makes sense, doesn't it? I like that you've really thought through the mobile thing as well. There's
It's
nothing.
important.
It is, and because most job applicants are using mobile, it's quite funny because most recruiters are using laptops, so
Yep.
we don't think it through. It's funny when I was just updating some pages on my website, I know that they'll get looked at more on a laptop, so I'm less bothered by what they look like because I know that that's how my clients look at them. But it's with job applicants, it's very important, isn't it, to make it easy for
One
that the
quick
phone
thing
and the
on that,
chat
like,
and the SMS and
sorry. Yeah, just one quick, just simple thing on that. Like our most popular feature that we launched last year for the chatbot, this
yeah,
is from a candidate perspective, was
yeah,
a simple rewind button that lets, if you type something wrong, you can go back to a certain part of the conversation. And I think just making
Oh,
it
that's
mobile
cool.
friendly, allowing different ways to engage quickly is really important. Yeah.
So when you're working with a client, so I'm thinking of my recent banking experience, which was quite hilarious, to be fair. I ended up having to call them and they went, "Oh yeah, we know that page of the website doesn't work." You're like, "Well, maybe you should fix it."
Yeah.
Just thought like it's costing your clients. But anyway, but do you work with the teams then to really make sure that they understand the best design? Can you be that bespoke or is it a little bit more general? Like, how does it work when it comes to, okay, we're going to try this because we've got too many applicants. We need help. Our candidate experience sucks. All right. How do you take them through the process?
Yeah, great question. Short answer is yes. And I think
Yeah, give me the
when
shut up. No, kidding.
yeah, next question.
We're done.
Um,
We're finished now. No.
yeah, we're very efficient here, right? Um, but but
Yeah. Yes.
but yeah, I think about when SaaS technology came out, and what SaaS changed is
Mm.
you're no longer buying like a point in time product. You're kind of buying
Yeah.
into a journey. This product's going to change. You'll give feedback.
Mhm.
What generative AI has done is it's really made customers a lot more part of that journey. And what I
Yeah.
specifically mean by that is yes, absolutely, we will walk through your use cases and come up with. We have a kind of framework for
Yeah.
conversational design. And I really feel in generative AI specifically, there's a lot of questions that we want our customers' feedback on, such as, hey, do you
Mm.
want your chatbot never talking about pay, only talking about these other topics? Do you want it to source the
Mm.
answers from only your job pages and links you send us, or do you want it to have other sources? So I think there's a it makes conversational design a conversation with your
Mm.
customer versus just with
Yeah.
your in-house team. Yeah.
Yeah. Please ignore my doorbell. Sorry, in case you can hear it. I know, so I like that, and that's quite good. So I hear generative AI and obviously immediately going to like shaking my head mode. But what you're talking about is really the technology being used within the company's information, right? We're not talking about out on the other side that's very white male dominated.
No, yeah, correct. We're
Yeah, because I
talking
think
about
there's a lot of people just automatically think, oh, you're talking about OpenAI, and therefore, rather than that's really, it's a misunderstanding, isn't it, by people?
yeah, yeah, and we're seeing a lot of headlines around kind of building thin layers on top of um, large language models are trained on the internet. The internet is a
Yeah.
very biased source. There are pockets
Mhm.
where using things like OpenAI to understand candidate intent, but when someone's
Mhm.
asking a recruiting question, when they're
Mm.
wanting to talk about a job, you need to infuse the knowledge base of the chatbot and even your recruiting team. It's actually a very similar training that you would give a chatbot as you give a new human recruiter. And so yeah, yes, that is very important versus the wild west out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it is a bit Wild West, which actually does quite go into the thing that Bennett originally got me interested in when it came to Humanly was your flight recorder, as
Yep.
we call it. I'm sure that's not what it's called, but the fact that well, for example, it could sit in inverted
Yep.
commas on manager interviews, and you could work out actually is the interview biased? Is there the two-way communication? So, how did you end up with your flight recorder, and really, what is it? Like maybe better explanation than Katrina's version of what I'm
Yeah, for
saying.
sure. So what
Because
our
I'm being
tool?
distracted by my Amazon delivery person who's being most persistent.
No worries. um, but so we have generally with Humanly right now, so we have tools that will help with
Mm.
the initial screening, scheduling of candidates, finding
Yeah.
candidates through sourcing. When we talk about conversational AI, one of the we kind of transformed quite a bit as a company recently, and to have a conversation, you need both parties there. You need the candidates. So
Yeah.
we've done a lot on that side. But once you get into the conversation with a job candidate, whether it's a chatbot
Mm.
having the initial intake conversation or a human on
Mhm.
a Zoom, what you're referring to is the co-pilot. We have a technology we
Yes,
call voice.
that
Yep.
sounds better.
Yeah. And what we do with that is we can actually measure. So one simple use case, and we'll generally start with how can we save you a bunch of time. So in this case, it will
Hmm.
sit in on remote interviews, take notes, write a sample follow-up email for you. We're not sending anything to the candidate without
Mm.
intervention from recruiter, but it's a way to save time so you can focus on the candidate
Mhm.
when you're talking to them. But where we
That's
went
cool.
with that as well is the underlying technology can help us measure things like how empathetic are we being, how is there bias. So like the speed I'm
Mm.
speaking right now, our tool would send me in my email follow-up that I'm
With
talking over 150 words per minute. Candidates, if English was a second language, would be at a disadvantage. So that's what we wanted to do, save
I
you
always get in
time.
trouble for that. I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
get.
Between the two of us, we can get this done like 20 minutes because we're so.
Yeah, we're done, are we? No. But I
Uh,
do. I think I actually think Australians speak very fast as well. So I do have to always like slow down when it is, particularly if I'm speaking to an audience and the
yeah,
English is their second language. And it's really hard to slow down. So it's great that it tells you that because
yeah.
I
I,
think it
I'm a
raises
I'm
awareness.
I do the same thing, and yeah, and I think the quick kind of thing we've done with the technology as well is when I say quick, the change one of the changes we've made is also using what helped us allow you to have a better human conversation to look at our chatbots. Are we able to measure how effective, how empathetic our chatbots are being with candidates?
Yeah, which is cool. So you said that before we came on as well. So it's not just the human conversation, it's the chatbot conversation as well, making sure it's being quite fair. Oh, and didn't you also say you can track what questions aren't being answered, which I thought was
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
sneaky
and
and really cool at the same time.
yeah, no, there's and yeah, it is across the chatbot as well. So generally, we have
Mm.
chatbot, email, SMS, and then these
Yeah.
human conversations. But yes, it's certainly looking to kind of use that to be as efficient as possible. But yeah, the chat specifically, will the handoff piece is oftentimes when we talk to customers, if you are
Mm.
using a certain tool for a chatbot, maybe a different tool for SMS, different ATS, and maybe
Yeah.
even a different tool for remote interviewing. If the data is what makes the AI give you powerful insights, you're kind of having
Mm.
like four separate conversations, and to candidates that might feel like being interviewed by four separate companies. I already asked about this
Yeah.
question. I got a different answer from the chatbot than this human's given me, or I did. So can we hand off? So after a chatbot conversation, the notes are stored, but also we will share what questions the candidate might have had that weren't answered, and maybe by design, maybe you don't want the chatbot answered about pay, but you want to know that the candidate asked about it, so
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
answer that in the next phase.
That's so thought through. I'm just thinking of, again, calling, whether it was the bank or the telephone company, or I don't know if they call it that anymore, the cell company, you know what I mean? The phone company. These things. I'm trying not to say the company name. And you give all your security detail, and then they pass you to another department, and you asked for the security detail again, then you pass to another, and you're just like, I mean, seriously, I haven't hung the phone up here. Like, yeah. So that's good that you've thought that through, because I think I don't know that people do. I don't think they care enough sometimes when it's just, oh, I'm sorry, I have to take you, but I just went, "Oh." And that puts you off the company.
Yeah,
In fact, I
it
don't know why I
does.
stay with that company. Why do I stay with that company? Should really think
I'll,
about
I'll, I'll ask you offline the name of the company, but no, I've had similar experiences, and really, if you're doing conversational design right, really, it's about getting the right candidate to humans faster. So how can you
Yeah.
actually get the right candidate to your human team more quickly?
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like it takes some time. Like you said, that design piece is so critical. Now, the other word that you keep bringing up is empathetic. It's not really a word I think about when I think of AI.
Yep.
Certainly not what I think about Grammarly, that's for sure, when I was writing my book. It kept telling me stuff and I kept swearing at it. There was no empathy going on there. But how does that work? How do you create? Is that because of the measuring, or what do you mean by that? Spill the
Yeah, so
beans.
we partner with a
It's
company
an
called
interesting word.
yeah, it is. So we partner with a company called Empathic. Dr. Grinlord has done a lot of work in the empathy
Hmm.
space, and we're not we're not going. like we're not claiming to be experts in measuring empathy, but there are ways of measuring it that the
Yeah.
PhDs have figured out. Sometimes it's as simple as listening. So a chatbot can allow you a way to answer questions that candidates have. Instead of waiting a week to talk to a human, can you get them right there, answer
Yeah.
their questions? This does touch on conversational design. So if you're designing a conversation, you probably don't want to just pepper someone with 100 questions. You want to allow them to ask their own questions. As you think of the human conversations, we're finding that, and this was data that we looked at last year. It was quite sad. What was happening
Oh.
with junior female candidates is the interviewer was more likely to interrupt when there was a pause. They were more likely to leave less time for questions, and in some cases, more likely to engage in deeper rapport building with the male population. So being empathetic is about many of those things: active listening, interruptions, leaving time for questions, making it a two-way conversation, not a one-way conversation.
I'm really bad at the interrupting. Really
Me too.
bad. Someone wrote, I deleted the comment strangely. Someone wrote on one of the videos, she interrupts a lot. I'm like, piss off. I do. And actually, that particular person was actually Steve Guard. We were having one of these. We were having problems with the sound. And so I'm sure I was interrupting him more, but I'm a shocker for it. And actually, it's quite known amongst my friends. I just get so excited and I jump in. But you're right. It doesn't necessarily make somebody feel comfortable. But I think the big one is the hearing. Like, did you hear what that person said? And I spend a lot of time coaching or mentoring, really, talent acquisition professionals. And I'm always explaining, actually, what you're hearing is not really what's being said either. That adds another element. But it's the person that just spoke, they don't want to feel like it's a checkbox exercise. They want to have a follow-up. And I'm going back to when you were talking about your son, he wouldn't be asking a follow-up question to show that he heard what was said. He would just ask the next question, wouldn't he? Because of his age, those skills haven't developed yet. So I love that. It is amazing. That's when I think technology is great, when it's like taking the load and really helping and showing us how we can be better at this when we are particularly talent acquisition, so pressured as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's a good example with the follow-up questions, and sometimes too, going back to the handoff to human example, sometimes you don't even have to have an answer. So if the chatbot can't answer a question, and then the scenario is you talk to the recruiter and you have to ask the same question. It's a much different feeling than if the recruiter starts the conversation with, "Hey, Katrina, I saw that you had some questions in the last phase about pay. Can I answer them for you?" So I think that the handoff is also a way of the company at large representing their employer brand in an empathetic way.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? By actually saying, I see you didn't have this question answered. And because people don't mind as well. They don't care if the chatbot goes, I can't answer that. Can I pass you to a human? People don't mind that, but at least I just love that it gets over that initial hurdle of the black hole, the recruitment black hole, which is what it feels like. People just bye, see your application.
Yeah, and that's the problem with the Wild West of LLMs, where they will really try to answer. So I think to me, it's about getting them to the right place to get an answer, even if the chatbot can't answer right away, versus giving a crappy answer, and that's what really frustrates people.
Yeah, and that's my issue with that other generative AI as well, because it just gives crappy answers that it's made up from somewhere.
Yes.
But what you're saying as well, so if I'm here and I'm buying technology, I mean, it sounds similar to some of the stuff that I said last week when I spoke, but you also have some like questions that people can use when they're talking to vendors. Because I mean, they're looking at recruitment technology. I mean, I sometimes feel like I'm screaming humans this way and they're screaming AI that way, and it's all a bit. But obviously, how can they identify? How can they? I mean, just basically cut through the BS and know, like, what should they ask?
Yeah,
that's a very long-winded question.
Yeah, and well, it's a good question. There is a lot of BS out there, unfortunately. So oftentimes,
and there's some great stuff, by the way. There's some absolutely brilliant stuff out there. It's just, how do you know?
No, this
Mm,
is all really useful stuff if used in the right way.
mm,
I think it really
yeah.
starts with your people and your process. Like I said, AI can make things happen faster,
Mm,
more efficiently, and at a higher quality, but it can also make bad
yeah.
things happen more efficiently bad, right? So it's really about identifying the problem first. So when I
Yeah.
talk to our prospects, a lot of our prospects, they're in TA, so they're pretty good interviewers. And when I often tell them to write a job description for their AI in a similar way as if they were bringing on a
Oh.
candidate, and to
Oh, I
almost
like
interview
that.
them. Yeah, to interview them. So what do you do when you're
Mm,
interviewing? You care about experience and training, background, responsibility, skill, culture
mm,
fit, pay, references. I kind of turn that around and ask your vendor experience and training. What data is the AI trained on? What's its
mhm,
background? What use cases has it done? What responsibilities will it have, and will that change if it does a good job? Is it adding to your
mm,
culture, or is it detracting from it? What skills does it have? Different agents and bots might be skilled in different types of recruiting or different scenarios, such as intake versus Q&A. So in many cases, if we're asking it to represent our employee brand and actually talk to
mm.
candidates, I would kind of treat it as if you're filling a head count here.
God, they really are, aren't they? Because it's really. You're reminding me of something happened last week, though. I did ask this vendor because they were chatting away, and then he said, "Oh, we do this bit on ChatGPT," and I went, "What about bias in the arms?" But like that,
Yeah.
humans are biased was the response I got. And I went, I
Yeah.
really appreciate the defense because I'm me,
Yeah.
been around the block, don't care, so I can say what I want. But I went, I really appreciate the defensive body language. But I just stood on stage and told everybody in my session that they should ask that question and that you should give them a proper answer. And suddenly the arms opened. He went, "Oh, she's quite serious." And then he started to talk about what they were doing to try and stop the bias in what they were up to, which actually sounded quite reasonable as a non-technical person. But it was the initial, but humans must. It's like, yes, we are. Hence, we
I'm
don't want to
glad
put
you
more in
pressed
there.
though. I'm glad you pushed on that because that it
Oh
is
my
really
God.
important. Yeah, and
Yeah.
honestly,
I
I doubt.
somehow didn't swear at him because there were a few words that were going through my head that I just so wanted to say. But he just wanted to go, "Oh, just female, go away." That you could
Oh
genuinely
my.
see that in his facial expression. It was so funny.
Yeah,
So
that's
funny.
bad. Yeah, no, unfortunately, that some people exist like that. But I think
Yeah,
that to us,
that's
another
okay.
question is
There's
like,
sales will go to elsewhere.
yeah, oh yeah, and they will.
Mm,
But yeah, another thing that I would ask vendors is, have they been
mm.
audited by a third party around the bias in their algorithms, and
Yep.
are they following a governance framework for how they monitor and measure new things, how they release
Mm.
software? But yeah, it's becoming more common now to have third party audits. Similarly to a
Yeah.
SOC 2 or ISO type audit, you should also be auditing your AI.
Which is good, isn't it? Because I bet there's plenty that'll go up, and then they'll be the humans biased. But I like that. I mean, but it also makes sense because there has been already a case in the US, hasn't there,
Mm-hmm.
of a company charged. I can't remember what the company was, but
Yes,
it's
yes,
it's
indeed.
already
And yeah, there's been some leadership in on the EU side. There's been in New York and California some laws, but and yes,
Mm.
lawsuits as well. And these especially when in the scenario, and we're not in the space as a company, but some companies are, when you're actually making decisions on behalf of a person, that's where it gets a little squishy. So it's important to ask the right questions.
Yeah. I think that's always my concern when it's used like for the sourcing and the parsing. That's always where I start to get a bit. Because I mean, as you've heard me say so many times, I'm always worried about the manager's inability to articulate who they need to hire in the first place and then matching against these resumes. But so what do you do with I mean, you're not doing the screening, are you? But you do the sourcing. So what is that? Is that sending out messages to the existing pool of people, or are you finding new pools of
Yeah,
people, or
yeah, good question. So
it's
here's
high
how it works.
volume? So it's entry level high volume, isn't it? So it'd be a different data set.
Yeah. So generally high volume. We do get a little bit into kind
Mm,
of the mid volume, but it is entry to lower mid level roles. So the way it works is, and we work really well with our partner applicant tracking system. So we're not in
mhm,
any way replacing that. So you have an applicant tracking
mhm,
system. you sync your jobs into our system. And generally speaking, we'll have so we have a database of about 600 million job candidates, and what makes our database perhaps better than others is the recency of the data. So we're keeping in touch
Yeah.
with these silver medalist candidates. This isn't someone
I
that
assume you
did a
mean the
profile.
chatbot is keeping in
Yeah,
touch.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So
It's
it
so
isn't
cool.
someone you hadn't talked to in 5 years. So yes, you can
And
run email
yeah.
campaigns. We're
Okay.
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, no, I was just thinking when it keeps in touch, I assume that people know it's a chatbot keeping in touch. It doesn't
Yeah,
go,
and
hi, I'm pretending to be human. It's like,
yeah, and that was really important to us from a design
yeah.
standpoint. Hence, our chatbot doesn't even have a name right. I would run into some companies that would share metrics with prospects, like
Mm,
75% of people thought they're talking to a human. Like our success metric is not tricking people into thinking they're talking to a human, but it's
mm.
getting them to the next best step as fast as possible. So yeah, they know they're talking to
Which is
technology and a
which is
chatbot.
good because you can pretty well guarantee most of the time that it's given a female name.
That is definitely the most common name. Yeah. So
Yeah, and
our
it's like, oh God, yeah. Does yeah. It mm.
yeah, and
It just
people,
goes into the whole bias and the all of that, and you're just going, oh my God. You shake your head.
yeah, I won't get too much into that.
No, we're not
Yeah,
going
yeah,
into that. We'll run out of
yeah.
time.
But yes, there are a lot of examples that are kind of appalling
Yeah.
in some ways.
Yeah. But anyway, you were saying that so that it keeps in touch, keeps the data set up to date, which is really, really cool. And
Yeah,
then it does, so you can just do an email campaign from that.
yeah. So you do an email campaign. We
Mm,
will automatically. We want you to be able to talk to everyone. So you have a
yeah.
set of candidates for the role. You run an email campaign. We'll automatically detect if there is a response, if that response is a positive or negative one, and then
Yeah.
route you to the next step. The next step could be talk to our scheduling chatbot if it's a warm candidate, talk to our intake
Yeah.
if they just have questions, talk to the FAQ chatbot, or it could be going to another email. We're adding SMS as well as a way of campaigning. And after after we've gotten your attention and you've gone through an initial
Yeah.
step, we will screen you via the chat and then
Yeah.
schedule you on the calendar. So from a customer standpoint, you're syncing your jobs, making sure you're okay with the campaigns, and then
Yeah.
sitting back while you have a meeting scheduled.
And they're probably more likely to turn up for those meetings as well, because again, you've kept in touch with people. They're not just a random. We get a lot of there's a lot of AI applying for jobs now, or people using
Yeah,
AI to
yeah,
apply for jobs, technically, is the correct way of
yeah,
saying that. So you're kind of cutting out some of that because you're keeping in touch with genuine people. So therefore they're much more inclined to know who they're talking to as well.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
for
just oh,
sure.
I mass applied to 100 jobs I don't remember, and then they just don't show for interviews and do all sorts of stuff. There's a lot of that going on, which is
Yeah,
messy.
totally. There's a lot of no showing, ghosting going on. I think
Mm.
in addition to keeping in touch with them, another way we can impact no show rates and ghosting,
Mm.
like make this if they get the email and they're interested and they go to a chat, let's
Mhm.
get their questions answered and allow them to screen the companies as well. So you're not just screening the
Yeah.
candidate out, but you're screening them in by allowing them to get their questions answered. And it's
Yeah.
crazy how frequently this happens, but oftentimes candidates apply, they go through a first step, and then they find out something that could have easily been addressed,
Mhm. Yeah.
such as pay or something like that, and then they don't show up at the next steps. So.
Oh, yeah, which is not surprising. Actually, I was talking when I was researching Reboot Hiring. Oh God, some of the stuff. But a friend of mine was telling me about because she's in UAE, in Dubai, and about the fact that actually until offer, so they'll go through all of it. They don't know what the salary is until offer, and then of course they get the offer, and it's always insulting. But they have to go through the entire process, and you're just like, what a waste of everybody's time and
That's
energy,
time.
and it's absolutely mad. So the other thing that I'm hearing quite a lot of, and I know you don't always just deal with recruiters, do you? Sometimes you deal with managers directly because you have lots of deskless. You're
Mhm.
quite good in that space, is that right? How do you
Yeah,
guide the managers, or do they just become like it's repeat roles, so it's quite easy for them? How do they
yeah,
manage?
yeah. Good question. And yeah, we do work quite a bit in the deskless worker space. This could
Mm,
be a store supervisor, a manager that is not a TA
yeah.
professional and also has,
Mm,
in many cases, they have like 10% or 15% of their day to probably the most important part of the job, which is hiring, right? So
yeah.
generally speaking, so we feel these tools should be the automated and AI part should be easy and transparent enough for
Mm,
anyone to pick up and use. So you might have a hiring manager doing a search.
mm,
We are generally focused within professional hiring, generally focused on a recruiter, and then within desk lists, yeah, it is general a store manager. So really, one
it
is we
tends
don't
to be
want.
quite a repetitive role, so they don't have to kind of go back to the drawing board all the time and think about who they're needing to hire, which is always the bit I think is broken. But actually, in
Yeah,
store hiring, it's quite clear cut what the roles are, isn't it?
it's very
It's that
clear
little
cut.
bit easier. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably have a lot of people that apply in volume that are silver medalists, and if you
Mm,
maybe 2% of people get the open job, but then how do we keep in
yeah.
touch with the rest in the background for you? So really, if
Yeah.
you are a store supervisor, you are setting up humanly, and then you're never logging in again. What's changing is you might have a new job in your ATS, and then humanly will operate in the background with your kind of past candidates, our database of candidates. We can also take candidates out of your ATS that
Yeah.
might have applied or showed up there a while back, and then surface them to you. So you're not having to like administer new flows, or you set it up. And as you create jobs in your ATS and sync them into our tool, that's when we
Mm.
start talking to candidates on your behalf and engaging with them.
That just sounds like the perfect way to use it to save hassle. And that's where I think it should be used, is very much for that. So yeah, I get why you created it. So what's next? If you got like 2 minutes, what's your next plan for Humanly? Just world domination, obviously, but
Yeah, so right now,
obviously from this live, 3,000 customers are going to sign up. So you'll be so busy, like
I'll be ready. It's early, so I have plenty of
I'm
time.
here. Chatbot's open.
I'll keep my phone on. But yeah, so right now we're very much trying to deliver on that promise I described, where hey,
Yeah,
sync your jobs in, or let AI write your job, help you write your job descriptions, and have
yeah.
qualified candidates on your calendar the next day, the next week. Specifically from a product standpoint, it means getting to where candidates are. So SMS is one
Mm.
example. If you're doing sourcing but only using email, you're missing out on what sourcing can be. So
The
multi-channel.
kids even have email. I mean, these young ones don't even
Yeah, no, it
like email.
is.
That's so Gen X.
Yeah, no, it's email is certainly in different types of usage than before, but can we get through all
Yeah,
those channels, whether it's a QR code out in person, or it's a
yeah.
SMS message, and then can we really get you these candidates that are in touch, highly qualified? So our
Awesome.
database and being able to surface these candidates is another area. So we feel if we do that right, the future will write itself
Yeah,
for us. So that's what we're really focused
sounds
on right now.
great. I love that. I love that QR codes came back too. Do you remember they died there for a while and then they've come back? They're so important. They have
Yeah,
them on the
no,
TV screen now.
yeah, they came out, and then they were kind of like not that cool, and then all of a sudden
They're back.
they came back with a
They're
surge.
like,
Yeah.
you watch this show, screen the QR code, and you're like, I'm watching TV and there's a QR code. What the hell? Yeah, they died.
Oh, and
I
it's
just
moving
remember when they died.
around and stuff, and and chatbots also came back. They were once
Ah,
a thing, and the tech wasn't really there, and yeah.
it wasn't ready yet. No, well, it sounds like you're heading in the right direction. And I feel like this load being lifted off so that, talent acquisition can get on with doing what they really need to be doing, which is also really exciting. So, watch this space. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the easiest? Should they stalk you on LinkedIn?
Yep,
What do you want?
absolutely, and you're right. That is the feeling we want, that a load's been lifted off. Find me
Oh,
on
sorry.
LinkedIn. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm going back to the last thing. But yeah, you can
That's
find me on
cool. I was
LinkedIn.
going to say, and then I moved on, which was unhappy.
um, you can also. I'm also happy to be emailed at prem@humanly.io. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm always happy to talk about conversational AI and the like.
Yeah, no. Thank you so, so much for this. It's been really, really interesting. And I've learnt loads as well, which is so cool. Love that. All right. Thank you, everyone.